Thank you all so much for making the time to be here in this beautiful place of Tenerife. And similar to what Lucia was saying, also coming here for me made me think back about my first international activities as a PhD student and how I enjoyed not just the activities in itself, but also the many good things that followed from it, right? Some years ago, for example, Anna and I met in Florence for a winter school, and we started working together, and she has visited me several times in Amsterdam, right? So often these things grow from weeks like that. So we really hope that this week will be interesting and helpful, not just during the week, but also for the years to come. And we really do hope that you will also reach out to me and all the other trainers afterwards to just keep connected and work together on our many shared interests. Thank you so much, Sonja, for inviting me to be here today and to contribute to the training school. We will talk in this lecture about identifying the effective ingredients of family support. What makes our programs work and what maybe does not make them work, right? So maybe think of a program that you study, a program that you heard about. I know some people in Portugal work with Triple P. Lucia works with a program in foster care, I think, right? Yes, oh, you see it. Other programs that people work with or think of when I pose this question? Sorry? Growing up for the adolescents? Yes, good point, because we often think parenting programs could be for younger children, but just as much for adolescents, absolutely. My thesis, hypothesis, statement, maybe bold statement, is that the program you are thinking of most likely is a cocktail of many different things, right? Maybe the practitioners are asked to use quite a big range of skills to work with the families. Maybe if they give families advice, it's many different things that the advice can be about. It's usually not one thing they discuss, not one technique they suggest, but a wide range of things. And often when we study the effects of programs, we study them as a whole, as a package deal, the program, right? Do in the end, after the program, are families then better off than before the program or than without the program? And often it remains unclear what it is exactly in the program that makes such a huge difference. Think of a 10-session parenting program. Is it mainly session 2? Is it 3? Do all sessions contribute equally? The truth is we often do not know. And one of my quests in my research life is to find out more about that. And I'll hope to share also with you why I think that is important. I sometimes compare our programs to Jenga towers. Is Jenga familiar in all your countries? I love how some of these things are universal. And I bet that in each of your programs, there are bricks that could be easily removed without any of the effectiveness being affected. Maybe we do them because we like them, because other people do them, because they are nice, but maybe they're not so important. I'm sure there's also bricks that if we would remove them, the whole tower, the whole program would collapse, right? And then, of course, the question is, which brick is what? What are the essential elements? Which are the things we really need to do in our family support? Which things are superfluous? It's fine if they're there, but they don't really add much. And maybe there's also harmful elements, or at least elements that actually make the program maybe less effective. Maybe in some cases, removing bricks could make the program even more solid. So what is the value of understanding which ingredients contribute? I say it's a twin value, both for science and for society. The scientific value is, of course, that we improve our understanding of parenting and how it shapes children's behavior. So let's say that praising children for positive behavior is a super important effective ingredient, but actually ignoring misbehavior is not, right? It could learn us about why children behave the way they do. What is it in parents that really shapes their behavior and what is not? So in a way, our programs are like an experimental manipulation, of course, of parenting behavior. So there's also a scientific merit to understanding it. And then, of course, a lot of applied and societal value. Our programs maybe can become more effective, more efficacious, have better promise if we only focus on the elements that work best and if we remove things that actually do not work. Also that we then really have the parents' attention focused to the things that matter most. Probably programs will get more efficient, right? Maybe from the 10-session program, we can remove 3 sessions without losing effectiveness. That'd be great. We would gain time, gain money, time that parents can then spend with their children, right? And if programs are more efficient, it also makes them easier to take them to scale. In the Netherlands, we have various programs that are considered evidence-based, but many of these programs are not accessible to all families. And then I think in the Netherlands, it's a relatively well-advantaged country, of course, right? But there are still, many of the programs are just too expensive. If they would be simpler, maybe scalability also becomes less of an issue. And lastly, now often, we had over breakfast a discussion about fidelity and implementation and the tension between that. And often that is for professionals that's difficult, right? You want to adhere to an evidence-based program, but you can also not ignore that families have different needs and different questions. But now you either stick to the manual or not. But if we move from evidence at the program level to evidence at the ingredient element level, we can play around much more flexibly with that. So I'm also hoping that this type of work can, in the end, support practitioners in doing more evidence-based personalization. I'm very well aware that although we all work on family support, we probably come from different disciplines. We work with different programs, adolescents versus young children, maybe foster families, programs that are based on different theoretical orientations. I'll use quite some examples throughout the lecture, and therefore I just wanted to give you a bit of insight into the research that I do, just as an explanation for the examples that I use, because the examples that I use are not less or more exemplary or better than others, but I hope it will help you understand if you have that bit of context. So I studied, as an undergraduate, I studied children's development at the University of Nijmegen, and then I did my PhD. For my PhD, I did an evaluation of the Incredible Years parenting program for migrant and socio-economically disadvantaged families. And the Incredible Years family program is content-wise quite similar to, for example, parent-child interaction therapy and PMTO, and it also resembles Triple P quite a bit. So it has a strong focus on social learning theory. The first is a big element of improving parent-child relationship quality, and afterwards they move on to learning theory-based behavior management. So drawing from learning theory that children show more behavior when it is being rewarded and show behavior less frequently when it's not being rewarded, when extinction is being exercised. Parents are encouraged to reward positive behavior, to ignore trivial misbehavior, and when misbehavior is too serious to ignore, to use procedures like timeout. So when I talk about programs in my lecture, I'll often talk about Incredible Years or Triple P. It doesn't mean that I think these programs are particularly good or better than any other, right? This is just how my brain is wired after years of studying them. And when I talk about ingredients of components, I might use praise and timeout as examples. Again, not because they are necessarily good or important components, but because we've been studying them quite a bit. Is everyone familiar with the timeout procedure and how parents, yeah? Is anyone not? No, thank you, that's good, because that's a good opportunity to explain them. Does someone want to make a start with explaining what timeout is and how parents use it? Anna, would you?
Well, it's like when a parent, for example, has a tantrum, is getting a bit aggressive or starts to scream, and you want them not to really give them a punishment, but just like be able to breathe. You can say, well, just sit on the stairs, for example, or like maybe a safe place for a child. So it's not like a punishment; it's more about a timeout place. So it's really time out for the child to get able to breathe again and to become more rested.
Exactly. Thank you so much. The timeout is designed to prevent positive reinforcement from happening. So if you would hit your brother to get his toy, if I would not intervene, you're actually rewarded for hitting him because you'll end up with the toy. So I would take you out of the situation to cool down. Also, I think quite often to prevent me as a parent to intervening in any other way. So it's like a non-violent way of reinforcement where both the parent and the child get a chance to cool down. And timeout is quite a bit controversial. Metin is from Sweden, and I know in Scandinavian countries, timeout is not popular. Parents often don't like it because you separate the child from yourself. Is that similar in Croatia? I see Nina nodding. Yeah. So I think timeout is a perfect, that's one reason why I used it. It's a perfect example because I think it's worth really understanding the merit of timeout. Can maybe our programs easily do without, then let's get rid of all the hassle. Or do we maybe need it? Maybe it's one of those essential bricks. For a component like timeout, which is controversial, difficult to implement, and therefore costly, I think it's valuable to know whether it's important, how useful it is. Okay, so you have your program in mind. I hope by now I have convinced you that it's like a drug cocktail, one way or the other. If you would want to know which of the ingredients of the program are effective, are those essential bricks, how would you find out? What would you, not in this PhD, don't worry, but like if you would do another, or if Lucia one day decides to do another, right? What could she do to identify ingredients that are effective in your program? Just really curious to hear what you come up with. Yes, thank you. So we can compare different versions of the program, right? So for example, in the case of timeout, we could do Incredible Years the way it's originally designed with timeout and compare it to exactly the same Incredible Years, but just not timeout. We just remove the session altogether, for example. And we can see, how does it compare? Thank you. That's definitely one way to do it. Other ways?
Ask parents.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
I mean, say ask parents.
Yes, yes.
Survey after every session about the content.
Exactly. Who better to ask than the parents themselves? Which are the things that made a difference for you in your home? These are all the things that we suggested you could do. What are you using and how well is it working for you? Yeah, absolutely.
I had the same answer.
The same, good.
To ask parents themselves what helped them the most.
Exactly. Great spirits think alike, right?
I think even the practitioners, because they implement the program.
Right.
In my case, they know the families, so I think they have the knowledge sometimes.
Two main group of experts. So also ask the practitioners. I'm repeating for the people who watch the recording.
And also ask the children.
And ask the children, of course. We should not forget about them. How would you do that? How would you use children and ask them questions to get to what the most important ingredients are of your program?
They could follow the developmental path, and according to the maturity level also, but include questions that get us to understand how they perceive and how they interpret parents' actions, parental practices, and how they cope with the challenges there. It's very
Exactly. So you're saying you need, of course, adapt yourself and follow their, right, to their developmental path. Make sure you don't ask questions that when they're too young for those, but you can ask them what they see in their parents, right? And if they perceive changes and what is different. What is mommy doing now different than she did before? Yeah.
We actually did that recently.
Oh, you did that. Please do. Oh, is it really difficult?
Yeah, so if anyone has also done that and wants to discuss it later.
Or wants to do it? Yes, yes.
Great ideas on how to
Okay.
Yeah,
I won't ask all the questions that I have now, but how old were the kids?
so we started at 10. So
Okay.
The age group figures, well, maybe they can tell something about
Great.
what they've experienced, but and we did it with like a drawing and then draw this, but it was really difficult. So.
Okay, okay. Ooh, we'll hear more from that during this week, I'm sure. Thank you for bringing that up. So we've had comparing different versions of the program. Ask practitioners, ask parents, ask children. Is there anything else one could do?
We have more measurement points during the program and see how they develop.
Wonderful. So more measurement points during the program. It could be, for example, that everyone starts to change after session 3, where parental empathy is taught, and then maybe that's a suggestion that something is happening there. Could be. Yes, thank you. Nette?
Yes, I think this I will try to link these presence or absence of these components or use or non-use of certain types of
Exactly. So Metin is saying, can we not compare maybe the presence of components in programs to their outcomes? So are programs that teach time out, are they more effective in reaching their goals than programs without time out? There would be some evidence as well. Okay. I tried some strategies. I came up with some, and I tried most of them myself. And now what I hope, you'll see many of these. I think you've covered most of it, actually, the group as a whole. What I'm hoping you will do is that you will evaluate them. Because I think as often with research, every strategy has their pros and cons. So I think the suggestion that Samia posed and that Anna practiced with like actually asking children, it will give a unique perspective that no other perspective will give us. And at the same time, there's many challenges. And I think we see that with many research strategies, right? So I'll discuss some strategies in the rest of the lecture. And every time I will pause a bit to hear your thoughts. And I'm hoping to get your feedback on the extent to which you think it will be feasible, right? Could it be done? Or is it just some picture-perfect world where the whole families in Tenerife will all get, right? Okay. So feasibility, it's good to keep in mind. Generalizability. I don't know, maybe I want to put parents under a microscope in an fMRI scanner. But maybe then we lose a bit what happens in the real world, right? So think about how easy it is to do it, and also how meaningful the results will be to everyday practice, the generalizability of our findings. And lastly, the rigor in terms of causal inference. With this strategy, how sure are we really that it is this component that makes it different? Right? So maybe we have more confidence in some research strategies than others. Feasibility, generalizability, and like rigor in terms of causal evidence. The one some of you post, expert opinion. So one strategy would be to bring together the experts. I admit I was mainly thinking of practitioners and parents, but I fully agree with you that maybe kids should be at the table too. But it might be that if we ask practitioners for what are the things that are most important in a program, what are the drivers of the effects, what are the effective ingredients, maybe some will say it's strengthening the competence. That's what matters most. Or it's all about parent-child play. Right? And of course, we can then do like fancy qualitative integrative analysis like Delphi methods, etc., to not just ask one practitioner once, but ask several over time and get to consensus, etc. Right? Or we could ask parents, and maybe they too will come with their suggested key ingredients. So let's evaluate the strategy together. Feasibility, is this doable? Could you do this as part of a PhD? I see people nodding. Feasibility is good, I think, right? This is not impossible. Anna proved it. It can be done, right? Generalizability. Do we think that what parents and practitioners and maybe children tell us will tell us something about the real world and how people really experience it? Oh, a bit more caution. No? Why not?
One size does not fit all.
Do you mean what one parent thinks helped them does not mean it will help others so much? Okay, good. So at least we would need good numbers and everything then. Yeah, representative, yeah. So generalizability, okay-ish. Rigor, are we confident that, let's say we see 10 parents and they all say, yes, it's time out. Time out is what made the biggest difference in my life. Would you conclude based from that, yes, so time out is the most important ingredient. Our national guidelines from now on will say your program has to include time out. Would you be confident enough? I see Metin very uncomfortable when I make that suggestion. I think Metin is more the quantitative.
Yeah, this and also through experience, I've seen very interesting examples.
Of qualitative findings like this, you mean? Yes, yes, okay. Do others agree with Metin that maybe in terms of feasibility, this one is like maybe top of the list, but in terms of like rigor and confidence, maybe it's not? Yeah? Someone wants to argue with that statement, maybe? Metin and I love it when people say, I don't agree with you, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, I'm not really totally in favor of the qualitative methodology, but I recognize that the qualitative people say that it's nothing related to generalizability, but the meaning really to capture the real
Yes.
meaning that is behind.
The real meaning,
and
yes.
The sense and the atmosphere that are around
Yes.
these things,
Yes.
and not just the generalizability. So they use a different standard.
I like
for
that.
things.
I like that. I think what Maria Jose is selling, Patty, your criteria are from a quantitative person. Yes, no, I see what you mean. And the stories that people tell can never be expressed in numbers in any way. Yeah. And here we see that coming together, right? The pros and cons. Andy, please.
I think that there's from my perspective, if the parents are saying it works and we're saying it doesn't work, who are the experts?
That's a very good point. What is that? What is working? What does work mean? And who knows that? I love that. Thank you.
And also has some level of analysis that contextualize the
Yes.
meaning that come out from these conclusions, because eventually we could find parents saying that spanking works,
Right.
and then we would not put that in the
Yes.
advisory
Yes.
program.
Yeah.
We have to see the context where the information is produced and how
Yeah.
does it fit with other levels of this context, the policies, the law, the ethical responsibility.
So I think I hear you say both. What parents say should be put in context, but also parents are providing us with a lot of context. Yeah, I saw one more.
No, I was just wondering that sometimes when you ask, I love qualitative methodology, but it's true that when you ask parents, like, what worked in this program, they focus on very specific things, and sometimes they are kind of a chain reaction. So maybe from time out to work, but before you needed to understand something that it was like more, I don't know, theoretical or something that you need to understand to reach that point. And sometimes they just tell you like the final result, but not maybe all the elements that they needed to get to that result. So I think sometimes if we take that as only the only information that we use, we miss all those kind of chain reactions.
That's a very good point. So you're saying people could come with one ingredient that comes in like session 6 and everyone thinks like, yeah, that's the ingredient. But if we focus too much on that, maybe we forget that it could be that that ingredient is working so well because we have session 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 building up to that. And I see Nina, someone else who developed programs, knows like this is not random what we do in each session. We don't just draw a number. There's a system. Yeah, absolutely.
For me, that is the question from the beginning, from the slide with the pills, because in my view there should be a pill related to the process and the group work, the direction.
Yes, it would be a path of pills for you, not just a bottle of pills upside down. It's often the questions that I get about order of components, interactions between components. I'm sure we need to study that. It's complex, but that's never a reason not to do it. Yeah, Lucia.
No, I wanted to add in favor of this strategy that I think that brings us out of our researchers' mind. When you say you have here a list and choose, I was thinking about not providing a list. So maybe you find an ingredient that you didn't know that was relevant, and then you can perform other ways of researching that are providing more rigor.
Exactly.
But you are starting with something that maybe you didn't think that.
I love that. Maybe after the training school, if we would give them a list to say what lectures, etc., help most, and then maybe people are thinking, no, it was the coffee break, because that's where we, right? It might well be, and that might not be on our list. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Okay, so one strategy, expert opinion, could be different types of experts. Strong in feasibility, generalizability, maybe even in different ways than quantitative results can ever be, because it really brings the stories in. And rigor, we can think about it in different ways, maybe. But I do think that we don't stop here, right? We don't just do expert opinions and say, okay, now we know. You had many more ideas to study it. One strategy that sometimes is used in the literature is common elements. So what if we list all the programs that we know are effective, all the evidence-based programs, for example, in Maria José's now wonderful catalogue. We can, of course, see what do they have in common with each other. If all the programs that work include a specific component, maybe that component is what binds them. Maybe that component is what makes it effective. We did that for parenting programs based on more these like social learning theory approaches, so programs like Triple P and Incredible Years, etc. We just had our list, a preset list, and we just ticked boxes like frequency count, how often are each of the components included. And we defined components as a technique taught to parents. You could, of course, also think of components and ingredients in terms of like therapist skills, right? But we narrowed it down to the techniques that parents are taught. Then we see that timeout and praise are super popular to use. Okay, evaluate me, evaluate my strategy. Is this feasible? Could you do this in your PhD? Maybe now we have Maria José's catalog. Maybe it could be done, right?
There is a problem, I'm not sure is it with visibility or generability, but I mean, you enhancing just the aspects that are popular, but not the others that perhaps are in development and could be seen as more effective through time.
Absolutely. The only candidates for the effective ingredients are the ingredients that are in there already. And it leaves very little room for you who have a new ID. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not on the list, but maybe your ID is much better than everything that's on the list already. So it kind of closes the door, maybe, the strategy for new IDs, right? Similar to maybe to what Lucia was just saying, like if you have your preset lists, you are limiting yourself. Yeah.
In your list, you got this ingredients, but they were content ingredients.
Yes.
But think about situations in which what is really essential or critical is the interaction performed with the participants. And that is processual ingredients. That
absolutely.
Self-reflection processes have to do with social interactions, has to do with free time to feel yourself apart from the turmoil at home, things like that. Well, that is more trivial, but I'm referring that just going to the content, you maybe do not grasp the more essential
absolutely.
I think there are some of
absolutely,
them,
no.
But you see empathy, negotiations, things like that. Of course, that is very interesting because that has more cognitive properties, not only actions or content actions, but still, there is a need of getting more insight into the quality of the learning process.
Absolutely. So this is the content, but there's also the whole procedures and how you do it. Like, what is praise? Is praise to just tell to a parent, yeah, you should praise your child more. Okay, bye. No, that's not, but then what is it, right? So you're absolutely right. There's a whole story behind each of the components. I really like that Anna is doing now so much of the work on online programs because there often we eliminate the interaction with the therapist. So that's kind of a nice experiment to see how much can be done by just information transfer or just self-reflection. Because you're absolutely right. And I think everyone who is a provider of a program says a program is so much more than what is in the manual, right? And this is how we go back and forth between whoa, this is way too complex to put in a list versus no, let's start with the list and then we take it from there. So this is how we go back and forth. I think in science in general, right? The world is very complex. We simplify it to study it, aware that this is not everything, and then we think back again and back again.
Yeah. So first of all, sorry for my level of English, but I hope that my message will be clear. I was looking on the list of ingredients, and I was thinking that it is for very well-educated family. But we have a family that then they don't have a very high level of education, or so I think that we should look forward to find ingredients for those kind of families that they can be monoparental, for example. Because in my countries and in a lot of East European countries, we face a lot of high
Mhm.
we have a lot of family, but they are monoparental. So I think that we should look forward to find ingredients for those fathers who do not have any ideas how to educate a good behavior in his child. And I think that a good ingredient in this list is a time, because we do not have time to eat together, to stay together, to I don't know, to just to be together, you know, to express our feelings, our emotions, our experience, not a life experience, but a day experience.
Yes, yes.
And I'm looking forward to see how to find the keys to go in that family that they are problematic ones,
Mm-hmm.
and to find the key solutions for the two families, because well-educated family or family with high incomes, for example, they can manage and they can find the solution by themselves.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. What country do you work in?
my Republic of Moldova.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I couldn't have articulated it better, the importance that it's probably not a one-size-fits-all, also at the ingredient level, right? And what I very much like I almost saw how you ended. So you introduced like socioeconomic status or literacy in parents, like maybe parents' education, or just simply how much time they have in the day also to spend with their children. And that maybe different ingredients, that's mainly what I hear you say, work well for different parents. And then what I very much like to say, then I got all excited, is we should find those ingredients that do work across families, right? I do think you would love to speak more with Nina, who is working with great ranges of families in Croatia. And also I think some of the ingredients you have found to work also across the board with also very high, so please reach out to Nina over the coffee break or some later. But this is definitely also a complicating factor. There is not like there is no one golden key. People would have found it if there was one golden key. But we can start mapping it, of course. What are the ingredients that overall are most likely to benefit families? And then what are the ingredients that most robustly are likely to benefit families, etc. Yeah.
Just one idea. A few slides ago, you spoke about parent playing role. Yeah. I think that we can add here grandparents play a role, because in my country, I speak from my point of view, my experience. We have a lot of children, but they are with their grandparents, not with parents,
Yeah.
mom and dad, but with grandparents. And a lot of them, a lot of these children are living through the experience of their grandparents,
Right.
not parents. And here, I think that we can find something really interesting to discover.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And also, it's also words matter in that sense, right? So when we speak of parents, if we could suggest as if it's only mom and dad that we speak about. Well, I think most of us who work with family support programs, it's actually caregivers, which is much broad. It could also be an aunt, of course, that takes care of the children. So one question, and then I'll move on, because I worry I might not get through my slides.
No, I was just wondering, because of what you said about the literacy part, that sometimes when we start to identify these ingredient that it's not working, or it's the way of delivery of the ingredient. I mean, for example, in literacy, maybe affection, it's equally important, but the way we teach them about how to implement that, it has to be different. So
Yeah.
I don't know if sometimes it's so much about not only the basic ingredients, but whether those ingredients have to be delivered differently to different parents.
Yeah. So you're saying it's also about the delivery, both overall as well as differently for different parents. And maybe there's indeed some then also a risk that we say, oh, this ingredient doesn't work for these families. While you're saying, no, maybe if we do it another way, this ingredient has the same value. Because I think that most of the ingredients, for example, positive reinforcement, that's not a cultural, the fact that people show more of the behavior that is rewarding, That's not a cultural thing. That's not a highly educated hobby. That is a universal human animal, how animals learn and behave, right? The fact that something is rewarding for you, you'll do it more often. If I try to make a joke here and you laugh, I'll probably make more jokes. If I try to make a joke and you frown to me like that, I'll probably stop doing it, right? So the fact that children's behavior can be shaped through rewards, that is a universal thing, whether it fits parents' values and how you would reward, right? In the Netherlands, often parents frown when they see American manuals where parents say, like, oh, you're amazing, Dutch parents are like, no, that's not how we do it. But does that mean that positive reinforcement is not helping, or should we just do it a different way? Yeah, okay. Strategy number 2. I think, again, one that is doable. It's mainly a literature search, and especially with people like Maria Jose who make these wonderful catalogs, we can build on this for these exercises. Generalizable, I think in a way yes, because it shows the programs as they are being used. Rigor, causal inference, indeed, I don't think so. And I think also I agree with Metin, something could just be popular. And also if I would do that in the Netherlands, I would probably say that the program was led by a woman. I don't think that's an effective ingredient. It's just that in the Netherlands, it's more often women who choose the profession of leading these groups, right? So it could just be something that people do rather than something that has a lot of meaning. And I think people copy each other a lot in programs, so that if Metin's program works and I want to develop mine, I might just do the same, but it doesn't mean there is a reason why they both work. Okay. This one was suggested by Metin also in the beginning. We could see if programs with a certain component are more effective than programs that do not have the component. Many programs are like each other, are similar to each other, but they differ a bit, of course, and we can really distinguish between them maybe in how they are different. So we did that in programs based on social learning theory principles, so that is indeed programs that help parents redirect children's behavior through differential attention, so make positive behavior rewarding and make sure that behavior that is disruptive is not rewarded. And then some of the programs had a stronger emphasis on also adding relationship building, relationship enhancement activities. So for example, not only emphasizing the importance of spending time together and investing time, but also to really have the child take a lead in play, for example, to have really an autonomy supportive way of engagement, or really emphasizing parental empathy, understanding the children's point of view. So we had around 150 evaluations of programs, and about half of them included, so all of them had, of course, something on the parent-child relationship, but some of them had a much stronger emphasis on it than others. And we saw that in treatment settings, programs that combined the relationship enhancement and with the behavior management, like the praise and the timeout, they indeed were more effective than programs that used a more lean, just the behavior management approach. We kind of had expected that a bit because we thought, well, if parents go into treatment also, then the relationship probably is a bit distorted after all those years of difficult children's behavior. So also I'm talking about treatment here, right? This is not like a prevention, public health way approach. This was really like treatment of children with conduct problems. More in prevention settings, we did not see that added value of adding relationship enhancement. We had not expected that at all. I think most practitioners would say these are components that every family can benefit from. We don't know why we found this. It might be that there was often in these families the relationship between the parent and the child was just quite good. And maybe if we would then explain to them, this is how you can engage with your child, maybe we just disrupted things that were going well anyway and we made them more secure than anything else. Maybe that is what happened. We don't know. And maybe there's also caveats of alternative explanations because let's also evaluate this strategy. Is this feasible to do a study like this? It's a bit more work already, right, to do meta-analysis like that. It's a bit more work. It could be done in a PhD. Generalizability, quite okay. Do we have more trust in findings like this than compared to just the commonality of elements? Are we going up a bit in rigor, in confidence and trust? I think we're going up a bit, right? No? Are you doubting it a bit? No, you, sorry.
No, I'm thinking about it.
Oh, it was just a thinking face. Okay. I was like, is it the doubt face, or but it was just a thinking face? Good. Now I will remember. Yes. No. Good. So, is this do we now have the final answer? Do we have all the trust we need in these findings, or could there still be, for example, an alternative explanation for our finding? Always. Anna, tell me, what alternative explanation could there be? Or why could there still be alternative explanations here?
You can always find one now. I'm stuck.
That's fine.
But there's
Yeah.
always an alternative explanation, whatever we do.
Yeah.
It might.
Metin, why could there still be alternative explanations?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. But connecting that to my presentation tomorrow,
Please.
I can pose one of the alternative explanation is whether these results are replicated over time.
Yes.
Because the implementation of these combined programs or using one particular active ingredient could be so good that it may become effective, but it may not be replicated. In
Yes.
different contexts, in different settings, cultures, etc.
Absolutely. And I think Anna would fully agree with you in that she says there's always alternative explanations. So Metin is saying it could be linked also to implementation, quality, that makes a huge deal. And especially in a case like this, so families were not like randomly allocated to receive that component or not. They just happened to live in a different country where a different trial was done on a different programs. But maybe the programs that had the relationship enhancement component also had something else.
We should have more information about
Yes.
the program to develop
Yes.
alternatives.
Yeah. These programs are more different from each other than just on this one component. And I grouped them based on this component.
Maybe 2 sessions more.
Could be, could be, could be. Yeah, and maybe exactly. No coffee, that was it. That was the problem, yeah. So I think you see where I'm heading. So feasibility becomes a bit more tricky every time. But then our confidence becomes maybe a bit bigger with each strategy, right? So we need to balance that. And I think that's also what we're seeing, that each strategy brings different things. Okay, so 2 more strategies I want to share. One is to just really single out an individual brick and study how effective it is. So what if we give parents not a whole program, but just one thing? And we did that where we singled out praise. So if we only ask parents to practice with praise. And in one study, we asked them to just for 2 weeks, every day, every evening, think about some good behavior their child showed today and write down if they praised it or not. And in one other study, we went even more micro. And I just wanted to share it with you and then again hear what you think about how valuable is this for our understanding of effective ingredients. So we studied praise, and again, don't take away from this lecture that praise would be good or important, right? This is just a component that we happen to study a lot. The reason for that is that it's used a lot, but we also know that not all praise is good praise. Some of you with more background in education may know some of the work by Carol Dweck, also that if you praise children for their personal qualities, more so than for their efforts, they start wanting to prove themselves more rather than wanting to learn. And they can feel ashamed more. If you tell children always how smart they are, they choose the easy puzzle because they don't want to fail. And if they do fail, they become more embarrassed, right? So praise is not always good. That's a very important thing. But it's used a lot in our program, so I think it's interesting to study it. And we distinguished between labeled praise and unlabeled praise, sometimes called specific and non-specific praise. So unlabeled praise would just be, oh, well done. And labeled praise would be, well done, you're sharing your toy with your sister. That is very kind of you. So to really make explicit what you praise a child for. Is in the programs you know, is it mainly specific labeled praise that is being taught? Specific praise, yeah. Descriptive praise, yes, thank you. Intuitively it makes sense, right, that children then make that connection. The funny thing is that most of the parenting behavior that is being encouraged in parenting programs is behavior that in well-functioning families you see happen naturally. So for example, the fact that when a child is whining, you just sometimes ignore it. Most parents just do that naturally. Labeled praise is a bit of an exception. Not many, I'm not sure if some of you have children, but not so many parents use descriptive labeled praise naturally. It's also a bit of a longer sentence. Maybe it comes across as more controlling, like, yes, this is what you did well, right? So I don't know. So that's why we thought labeled praise is an interesting one to see. Is it worth all the extra effort to encourage parents to not just praise good behavior, but to do that in a specific way? So we had about 150 families. This was kind of typically developing children. We randomly assigned them to labeled praise, unlabeled praise, and no praise. And to increase, hopefully, ecological validity, we did it at their family's home. So we visit them at their home. One of our research assistants went to their home. And I say here we had parents as confederates. So parents were like part of our team, we would say. The main things that parents said, the instructions they gave, the praise they gave, we had instructed that beforehand. So we wanted to have parents be as similar as possible. I'll walk you through it. So we literally visited families at their home, at the table. We played some games. We made sure that the child felt comfortable. And then the research assistant would say, I'm a bit hungry. And then she would get a container with slices of cucumbers from her bag. I don't know about kids in your country. In the Netherlands, cucumber is okay for kids. It's not a huge treat, but it's not like radish or something that they find disgusting. It's okay. Is that similar? No. Is it a treat or is it horrible? Horrible, okay. So imagine the Dutch kids who are okay with cucumber, right? Okay. And yes, we sometimes add cheese. That is true. No. Okay. So they say, I'm a bit hungry. So everyone was offered a slice of cucumber. And then the research assistant said, your dad and I, or your mom and I, we need to discuss something in the hallway, but we will be right back. And then the parent would say to the child the name of the child, and I want you to leave the food in the box. And that was, of course, instructed by us beforehand. We had a little note on the questionnaire saying, in a few minutes, I will say, your mom and I will, and then would you please say, leave the food in the box. So the child was left alone for 3 minutes. So this was like the first compliance task. Will the child, with nothing else to do, but to look at the container of cucumbers, eat or not? We would think maybe some would get tempted because there's nothing else to do, but probably they can pass this compliance task, because then the praise follows, right? Okay. Indeed, we instructed the parents on whether or not to praise a child when they would come back. So a third of the parents, you would say, if we come back, please go sit at the table and say, in the label praise condition, well done, you left the food in the box. Well done. And the control, we said, well, we'll just go back in and maybe be silent for a bit when we sit down. And we try to adhere really how, for example, it's also been done in incredible years, like make eye contact, be enthusiastic. We showed a clip, like this is how you can say it. So we came back and the child got the condition-specific praise. And then the research assistant said, actually, I feel more like eating chocolate. And here I bet that children in your countries too would like M&Ms. So then the cucumber went in the container with M&Ms. And then the research assistant said, oh, I forgot to ask your dad one more thing. We'll step out one more time, but we will be right back. And again, the mom said, I want you to leave the food in the box. And then the child was left alone for 3 minutes with the M&Ms. We came back and we rounded it all up. So we hoped that the kids passed the compliance test, and then depending on the condition-specific praise, we wanted to see, do kids who receive one kind of praise then be more compliant than kids who do not receive praise or another kind of praise? There's many limitations. I could do a whole, on that. One thing I did like was that the hard measure of compliance, this was not me judging whether the child was compliant. It was me just counting the M&Ms, right? It's as simple as that. We videotaped and we did see that some children licked them and then put them back. I actually forgot what we did with those, but we did use a new container for every set, yeah. Okay. Well, we saw that so more M&Ms is good, right? More M&Ms in the box means fewer M&Ms eaten. So high is good. We saw that actually kids in the unlabeled condition, the kids who had heard well done, that they were most compliant. Labeled praise was not even more effective than control. So based on this, we would cautiously conclude that at the very least, labeled or descriptive praise may not always be as superior as we think it is. But again, it might also be that it comes across less natural. It might also be that the well done children interpret that to their advantage. Yes, I'm sitting still on my chair. Yes, I'm doing all kinds of things, right? So who knows? Okay. I want to propose that in terms of causal evidence, this one is super strong in terms of experiment, manipulation. There's no real alternative explanations. Apparently in this case, it really is the case that unlabeled praise is more effective. But maybe in terms of generalizability, we can be more critical. Okay, but does that mean that the families Nina works with in Zagreb, that in her program we should indeed remove the labeled praise? Well, maybe some families in their kitchen with cucumber and praise once is a very different situation. So maybe generalizability is less good here. Feasibility is so-so, I think. It's a whole study, but it's a quite nice, tiny study. So we go up in terms of causal confidence in causal inference, but maybe we pay a price here for generalizability. And then lastly, once the first suggestion that was posed, we can compare a program with and without a particular element. So this is an overview of the Incredible Years program, which is like a pyramid, where the bottom layer is enhancing parent-child relationship quality. Also with the assumption that if parents start praising children or use other techniques, that they will have more value if their relationship is better, if their relationship is stronger. But we could, of course, just experimentally manipulate that, give half of parents the original Incredible Years and give half of the parents a modified version. If this bottom layer is so important, it should show. Then these families allocated to this one should benefit less than the others, right? How would we do here in terms of rigor? Confidence, would we be very confident if that bottom layer, if then the program reduces in effectiveness, that is because we removed that bottom layer? I think we would, right? So in terms of causal inference, quite a strong one. Generalizability? Maybe compare it to the micro trial with M&Ms. Is this one better? I think it is, right?
Could be depending on the setting.
Yes, could be depending on the setting, but here also we have all the other components, so you keep all the rest in place rather than isolating it. Sorry? The problem is feasibility, thank you. Yes. It's not that this cannot be done, it's just that if we would single out every ingredient and have to do like a whole RCT, because this is like an RCT with just that ingredient. And of course, if we compare a program to people who do not get anything, then we expect relatively big sizes of the effects. So the group need to be not that big. But if we compare two active groups, then it's about the effect size of just that bottom layer. So maybe you would need here at least 120 parents in each. Yeah, that's not a PhD. No. So over the years, we came up with different strategies, thought about them, tried to evaluate them the way you've been doing. This is kind of how we ended up with it. But I think you were a bit more critical here about generalization for good reason. So this is definitely always under construction. That's why I love so much your input also here today. You will, of course, get all the slides. I assume if I send them to Sonia, everyone will get them. So feel free to take pictures, but they will come your way anyway. So I think mainly what you see is that, oh no, I did not make this one red. It should be, of course. In feasibility, we went down, and in causal inference, we went up. I'm sorry for that mistake. That's, I think, the pattern you saw in the strategies, right? Okay. Quick recap of the things we discussed with all your super valuable input. Thank you so much for that. I posed the statement that family support programs are like drug cocktails. Even if very organized ones, Nina, still it's a combination of things. I hope I have convinced you of the merit, the value of not only evaluating them as a whole, but to also try to pick them apart and see what elements work. And yes, it's not perfect, and we lose a lot in terms of complexity, and we need to keep a lot of complexity in mind, order different families, but maybe it's worth it. as a line, not instead of evaluating them as a whole, but in addition to. There's more and more of you and us in Europe, so together we can get a whole lot done. The different strategies have different value in that, and that probably we need different strategies. We can't do these additive or dismantling trials, the last one, for all single ingredients. But maybe we should also not only do expert opinion, or only do the associations the way I did them. Thank you for your input so much. Questions maybe for now. Is there time for questions now, or do we move to coffee first?
We have time for 2 questions, and we will move on with another during the coffee break. Are there any questions?
It's not a question,
Please.
I was thinking that maybe the feasibility itself is a strategy, because I remember a practitioner told in a past session, so a peer support session, that she was teaching parents the time out, and the parents said, but the how, because she was saying, you need to find in your home a place for the child to be there, and the parents said, but the house is so tiny, we are 5 people
Yeah.
here, we have just a kitchen and 2 bedrooms, so sometimes even if the strategy is a good one, maybe it's not feasible for that case, so maybe the feasibility itself is a strategy.
I love what you're saying. The feasibility is key too in the ingredient. It could be that one component, if done perfectly, has this big effect, but that can be done like in 2% of the families. And there's one component that's not so effective, but everyone can get it. Then maybe this one is much more valuable. Yeah, it's a very helpful comment. Thank you so much.
So, for, let's say, for more academic purposes, your suggestion that these research methods from more quantitative to qualitative should all be used to make sense of this, let's say, broader method. But, I mean, from practice, being, let's say, developing from, let's say, qualitative to quantitative research methods, it's like the anecdote or the analogy with the elephant and the 6 blind men, if you're familiar with it. I mean, there are like 6 blind men, and there's an elephant in the room, and everybody's touching
yes.
it somewhere, and
Yes.
they say, oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is similar. Thing.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to
No. Yeah.
introduce the whole analogy. You can Google it, of course, but
No, I get it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I mean, for the wholesome picture, it doesn't make.
You're absolutely right.
Value, but it's the best way to go to describe these particular elements and try to combine them.
I really like what you're saying. So I indeed think what we should not do is now divide ourselves in 6 groups, 5 here, 5 blind men. Each go one thing, and then after 20 years come back and discuss, right? Ideally, we come up with a joint strategy. And what I envision is that maybe some of you have, I'll talk with Anna about what her kids were saying, right? And then maybe I'll try that out here. And if I then also see associations, I might run a trial specifically on it, right? So if some of the earlier strategies might be more hypothesis generating. Ooh, there's something with ears. Okay, let's figure this out further and then build it up. So to have a joint agenda rather than, yeah, let's just all do some strategies. Yeah, thank you so much. This is very helpful. Yeah. And now I remember I'll use it more because I like the one. Yeah.
I mean, it's a common problem in science and
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Sonia.